Hello, welcome. We're just gonna have a low-key hangout today. So I know that face. How's it going, Jake? You're muted.
Good. How are you?
Doing all right. Kind of curious who's gonna show up today because we don't have our entire agenda is hanging out and shooting the shit about LLMs.
Great. That's what I'm here for. Why Zoom?
This is where this thing usually happens. So this it's organized in Discord, but the Discord video stuff was very flaky, and so at some point it got swapped over to, I don't know, are you actually in the Discord channel?
I didn't know there
No.
was a Discord. Because now when you're saying that, I'm like, oh, this is outside Mento, but
This
we
is
have.
outside Mento. Yeah, I just mentioned it because half the people at Mento show up to some of these. So this is a little community group that I organize this weekly conversation. Oftentimes we'll have a presenter, somebody who's talking through a topic or something around that. But it's called AI in Action, and it's really just around, people trying to put these things into practice. But, it's December 26th, so it's a very we'll see who the heck shows up
Is
today.
it? I'm guessing it's mostly engineers and San Fran.
Mostly. Yeah,
Yeah.
Itai will come to some of these too. But
Someone just showed up and dropped. Oh, there are people here.
people here. How's it going, Flo?
Hey, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Happy holidays.
Hey.
I posted about this for the few people who are at work today, and so Jake showed up and he's like, "Wait, what is this? This is not a work thing." So,
Oh, nice.
but
Yeah, we nerd out about all things language models. I think it's like,
pretty much. And
yeah,
sometimes like you've brought some pretty fun like audio models and things like that too.
yeah. I think I do like the way the conversation was headed last week, where you guys were talking about the teaching to other engineers of how to hold a language model or how to make it useful, because
Hmm.
it seems to be like an acquired taste. And then like it's weird because there are people that put a bunch of hours into using language models or working with language models and still don't really necessarily get the most use as someone who's been using them for a long time. And then people who pick it up and are like really good at them tomorrow after picking it up today. So I thought that part of the conversation was super interesting.
Yeah, we can jam on that. Marco, are you going to join us for chatting today? Or are you just listening? I see you on there. Just listening. All right, cool. Um, well, I know Zach's coming, and I think Yikes was going to come too, so we'll have a few different folks. Um, but uh, somebody said host requires authentication on the commercial Zoom platform. Do you all pay for Zoom, or is this person like, I'm just wondering what's going on with them.
Yeah, I think it's under Swix's like pro account or something. That's also an issue that I don't know. Yeah, but yeah, I do think it's under like a premium account.
Yeah, but I shouldn't require somebody else doing premium for
No,
you, right?
no, I've never paid for Zoom.
Okay. Well, while we're waiting to see if anybody else comes, Flo, did you have any questions coming out? You said you were interested in where that conversation was going, but you weren't chatting too much there. So what's on your mind coming out of that?
I think mostly, yeah, for non-engineers who are like, I have a younger brother who's never been a programmer but has kind of like always followed in my footsteps in like nerdy stuff. Um, and is using the heck out of like manage. So we had our cursor year end thing wrap up, and I used like 800 million tokens in 2025, and he used like 1.4 billion, and it's not a programmer. But I kind of taught him how to like uh, use cursor to manage the chaos that is clients. He has like several clients in the marketing realm. He's a media buyer on the Facebook side, mostly. Um, and it was like basically here's how you make a repo connected to GitHub, put all your information about the clients in there, and then come back to the agent and ask questions. It's kind of like the basic workflow. But he still does things like will talk crazy to the model if it's bad, if it gives him bad results. He won't restart the new conversation. Like stuff that you kind of like realize over time, like, oh, this is how you should use the agents or the models
Hmm.
to get like the most use out of it. And I do not. It's also like a big brother, little brother thing. It's like very frustrating. But I'm like, how do you how do you how do you teach people to like the best, what do they call it,
Like
just
best practices or how
yeah,
to use it.
there you go. Best practices for, and I think it's a very hard thing to teach because
Hmm.
it's, yeah. I guess that's kind of like where I was
Do
going.
you have a sense what his mental model is for this thing that he's doing things with, swearing at, etc.?
I we've talked about it a bit, and I I do. Funny thing about it, this is ChatGPT came out. This is how I got an idea of what his mental model was. ChatGPT came out. I think it was like early or mid 2023, something like that. And I picked up on one of his conversations that he was having with the model, where ChatGPT had gotten into this mode with him after talking for a while, because again he's terrible about resetting the conversation, like understanding that there's like a context limit and a window and everything. And it was funny because like before ChatGPT actually had not computer use, there's a, oh my god, there was Simon Willison talked about this early on, how uh ChatGPT, the actual chat, like was given a sandbox where it could run
Hmm.
Python functions in
Right.
the
So it
background.
could do that for like deterministic questions and things.
Yes. And I can't remember the name of it, but before it even had that, it was basically telling my brother, like, he was like, okay, hey, go run that for me, go do that for me, basically, like, go run this function, or go,
Yep. Yep.
look up this thing. And it was actually responding to him as if it had
No,
that.
I saw this actually with a non-technical member of the company that I work at, right? And she had set up this like elaborate algorithm and it was like telling her it was running stuff and whatever, and it was totally bullshit. Um,
Yes.
right? It actually had written like she'd pushed it to write Python and it had written Python and she'd saved it as a file. This was in Claude, I think, Claude Workspace. She'd saved it as a file and she'd say run it and it would say it ran it, but it
Yes.
wasn't running diddly shit,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Now it turned out that became a very useful artifact for us to then use to understand her intent to build something that was actually deterministic and able to run and whatever. But yeah, there's a mental model that of this thing, I don't know what it is exactly, but a few of the things of like there's a personality, there's a being
Yes.
there, and if it
Yep.
tells you a thing, then like we are deeply conditioned to give benefit of the doubt when someone tells us a thing to believe it unless
Yep.
we have reason otherwise. And I think with an LLM, you should invert that and you say, don't believe it unless you have reason otherwise.
Yeah, that's actually great. A
What,
good
what was that
piece
old
of advice.
trust but verify, right?
Yeah, I mean that's a saying for humans, right? In this case, it's
Yeah,
don't trust
that
until you
was
verify.
Cold War Reagan. One of the few things he said that I agree with.
Oh, he's great at talking.
Hollywood. But yeah, it is interesting hearing how like normies are using agents and how they're interacting with it and how they're like without that systems mindset, without the like I'm a software engineer. I think about edge cases. I think about test cases. I think about evaluations. Like I've been diving deep into evals as I've been trying to build like the tiniest possible project specific agent. So like recreate Claude projects with the smallest agent possible because it seems like a really interesting framework, like I talked about in the presentation. But I am thinking like, can I share this Claude as coach concept with my dad, with my sister, with, you know, a non-technical friend, or even like a tech adjacent friend who's like worked in IT, but hasn't necessarily been a software engineer. And it's like, I don't even know, because it's also like product market fit, where I'm like, hey, here's like a tool you can use to like, you know, New Year's resolutions or like goals or whatever. And then people are like, I don't do New Year's resolutions. And I'm like, okay, so I guess this isn't for you. But like, I don't know. I think I would like to think most people want to get better at getting better, like so they can be like a fully actualized person. Like it sounds like Flo's brother has like a project he wants to work on, but he has to learn how to get better at working on the project because he's currently yelling at an AI, and the AI is like, ah, I'm doing the best I can, bro.
Yeah, I don't
No,
know that
the
that's like
AI is
default
just
human
spitting
state.
tokens back.
Yeah.
You
It,
swear at it, it'll start swearing at you. It's great.
no, for sure. Is that default human state to like want to get better at things? I don't know because as much as
I
I've
don't think it
seen,
is,
yeah,
actually.
like,
This was a so this is actually fascinating. So I think you all know, like, my day job is working at a coaching company. Like, we literally are uh trying to help people learn and grow. And
And it's like
we
a in a professional context, at
in
least
a
the last
professional context. Yep,
like I
exactly.
remember Manuel showed me like a demo of like the different personas where you'd have like a persona for like you're going to your manager or and the
We
manager
were
needs
doing,
some
yeah,
help.
stuff like that with
Yeah.
the LLM. So actually, one of the really interesting things we encountered is we tried to, so our core product is human coaches, people, person to person, believe it or not. Entirely in meet space. There is a, virtual call. But we're trying to figure out, okay, how can we apply LLMs effectively to solve the same sort of sets of problems around helping people learn and grow? And we were initially looking at it as like, can we use this to provide coaching to everyone, right? Like, coaching is great. Surely more coaching is better. Um, and there's a thing that I remember it was one of our HR early like HR partner people who was working with us a little bit on this, and he said, most people don't want to learn. Like, he works in L&D. His job is to help people learn. He's like
He
75%
works
of
in
people.
like learning
He
and he's
works in
like most
learning,
people
and
don't
he's
want
like,
to.
most people don't want to learn. Most people want some of the rewards that you could, in theory, get from learning, right? They want a higher salary, they want more prestige, whatever, whatever. Very few people actually enjoy learning and want to learn. Um, and I think that's actually a thing that I'm seeing all over the place in terms of usage of LLMs and other things related to it, right? Like, LLMs create heaven for autodidacts, people who want to learn.
Oh, it's fucking awesome. All the just-in-time learning I can figure out. Like
Yeah,
I'm
it's
learning how to learn. I'm accelerating.
yes, they're great for autodidacts. I think most people just want to delegate their thinking to it.
Anti-pattern, considered harmful.
Right. No, I totally agree, and this is one of the things that I talked about. But and I'm thinking about doing some talk, try to pitch some talks to conferences on next year around this. But like, a huge amount of the disconnect I see between people getting good results and bad results is the people who want to delegate their thinking. And like, the AI companies aren't helping with this in their terms of their marketing.
yeah, agreed. Totally agreed on that one.
So years ago, I worked for a small startup that was targeting compliance teams at small banks. So the idea was like, Pawnee, Indiana would have like Pawnee local savings and trust or whatever, right? Or like the it's Christmas time, so right. So there's like I forget the name of the bank and It's a Wonderful Life, but like the idea of like a local bank, new regulations come through from Washington, and the big giant banks they have teams of people, teams and teams of people. Like they have economies of scale. But the small bank, it's like one person, it's Bob or it's Carol, and they're the compliance person who's making sure all their paperwork clears and all of that. And I remember talking to one of our like legal team because we had a small legal team because it was a compliance tool. So they had to figure out the content for the system that me and the engineers were building. And he was kind of like feeling torn because he was like, well, the direction the product is going is giving people the tools to be like A plus on compliance. And the average customer wants to be like a C minus in compliance. Like they want to pass. They want C's get degrees. They want to make sure that they continue to have all their paperwork in order just enough that they can stay compliant and still operate as a bank. but they don't want to go above and beyond and have like excellent quality. And this like, and it was weird because the engineering team, like we wanted super high code quality. We had great test coverage. We had like really good systems, a lot of pair programming, and we like went out of our way to build like super high quality tools for what we thought was the solution. But most people just wanted to get by. And like I actually pitched my little Claude as coach thing to my mom, and she was just like, "Yeah, but like I don't want to have to like think about everything I did over the last couple of weeks and months." And I'm like, but how are you gonna get better? Like, how are you gonna grow? How are you gonna live the life you want to live instead of just like spending hours scrolling on your phone when you get home from work or surfing TV? Like, I'm actively trying to figure out a way to build like agentic methadone for scroll addicts. I just kicked off a new project today and I'm prototyping it in a Claude project before I can pull an agent out of it. But yeah, it's I don't know. It's weird.
I I do think that those people are fairly interesting to trail as they have conversations with language models because you can like understand the failure modes or like what leads them down that path.
So you've
But
shoulder surfed your brother while he's
yes,
coding a lot.
absolutely. And
Mm.
it's taught me a lot. Like that's one thing I can be grateful for. It's taught me a lot about like the capabilities of models that I would not have tried because I lean towards the okay, how can I use this thing to create code to give me a deterministic solution to my problem? And he's like, I'm just gonna give it everything. I'm literally throwing everything at the wall or at the model, and then I learn or realize like, oh, it's actually kind of good at this thing now. And because I have like such a long context of working with models, I'm like, no, 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 it's bad at that thing. Let's not do that thing. And he's like, no, I'm doing that thing. And it's like, oh shit, it's actually pretty good at that thing. So I learned a lot
Hmm.
actually by watching. But it's very frustrating because I'm like, you shouldn't use the thing in this way because it's gonna fail at some point, and then it's gonna blow up a client project. And he's like, yeah, whatever, I'm doing it anyways. Like I'm delegating the thinking. So it's very very chaotic. But I like I would like to learn more about how to teach the right, and maybe there is no. I think the answer is like maybe there's not a right answer. You know what I mean? There's no right way to hold it. There's like methodologies that you should use uh, if you want to get the most out of it right now. But because the models are advancing so fast, it's like, yeah, does that matter in a couple of weeks, in a couple of months, in a year or so? So yeah.
I think
Yeah, there's
there's
definitely a bubble on this server. Like it's a bunch of autodidacts. It's a bunch of like people who are thinking systematically about how to interact with these agents, but there's a lot less people on the server that are just like, I don't know, man, just do it. Because we tried that at like, when Claude Code first dropped, when it was like Sonnet 3.5. And then like we ran into enough of the rough edges of like, I want to build production ready systems and then maintainable systems more than anything else. Because I remember slopping out a bunch of vibe coded stuff early with Cursor when I first got into it like a year ago, and it was like I don't even know what's going on here. I luckily this is just like I'm simulating the hobbits going to Isengard or some shit. Like it was like a simple simulator, like roguelike thing. So it didn't matter. I didn't have to maintain it, but I started to lose traction. So I started developing these techniques to get better at it, but I don't know, because I also approach this sometimes with like super strict systems thinking, and then to your point, Flo, about seeing how capable the models and agents have gotten. You don't have to be as like you have to do it this way, you have to do it that way. It can just be like, yeah, it's close enough. Like kind of find that balance, tacking back and forth. Yeah. Cable, you were gonna say something?
yeah. So I was thinking about your sort of note about the C. Everybody wants a C minus, or lots of people want a C minus. And I have to admit, like, there's domains in which that's true for me, right? Like, I deal with a lot of ISO, security, yada yada yada, and like, you can go real deep on that, and I just want to pass. Like, I don't care.
I mean, the last year I was doing
Yeah.
garage startup stuff with my co-founder. I've now stepped down because like we're running out of runway, and I was like, this is going to take another couple of years before we get to any meaningful profitability. I got to find something sooner. But like doing the accounting, doing all the like business paperwork, like LLC stuff and all of that, like he's very much cross the T's, dot the I's. Like I want this to be bulletproof. Like even with me like resigning and figuring out all the paperwork to for me to step down, for him to take over it as like a solo thing. he wanted every single thing done perfectly, and I was like, do we don't have to do it perfectly. Like, I don't think most of these like government
But
organizations are going to give a shit.
it does lead me to, though, this sort of question of like, I think a tremendous amount of LLM use falls into that category, right? It's like, do it good enough to get me by. I actually don't care if it's above a quality bar. A problem that we see when you do that en masse is you get this like enslopification world that we're in. Uh, there's a lot of crap out there. There's a line that I'm trying to figure out how to weave this in to like doing it, but like garbage at scale is still garbage, right? Like it's like you it lets you do a lot of stuff very quickly, but is that actually useful or valuable? And so I guess the thing I'm trying to wrap my head around is like, you know, where do you draw those lines? Where is it good enough? And where do you really kind of like a thing that I think has been missed for a long time in tech is obsessing over quality. Most of our stuff is junk. Jobs was the last like prominent person out there. Steve Jobs,
Right.
obsessed over
Like,
quality.
it's what's it supposed to do? It's supposed to do this. Well, why doesn't it fucking do it? Yeah.
Yeah, he obsessed over quality. Um, and Apple used to have incredibly high quality software cross, right? Like the stuff all felt like it worked. And
Yeah, now it's
they
starting
still
to.
have some of the best hardware out there, but it doesn't feel like it works a lot of the time. And I don't actually, I'd be curious, is can you guys point to any company or product out there that now that is like setting a high quality bar?
In terms of like net promoter score, I mean like Costco? Like there's very few companies where I feel like they've got that lane and they fucking nailed it. And like Costco, Kirkland, like whoever their product selectors are, for all the upstream stuff, if they sell it, they stand by it with full refunds and it's decent quality. Like, if you get the storage container or if you get the towels or if you get the frozen green beans at Costco, like it's going to be good. And like I've been pushing family and friends to try this Claude as Coach thing because I feel like of the providers of agents and stuff, like Claude has done a good enough job. Is it like amazing quality? None of them are, but that's because they're also like aggressively frontier. So none of them are going to be like super polished, but at least it's useful, right? Helpful, harmless, and honest. Sweetwater, yeah,
Yeah,
like music stuff.
the other thing that comes to mind is DaVinci Resolve, like using that, staying within tech and a software thing. I really like it, but they don't, and their the Blackmagic's hardware when it comes to video stuff is really, really, really good, just like quality stuff. But even them, they have, I think, there are places where you go to use some of their stuff, and it's like, oh, this is like whatever engineer or team worked on this is asleep at the wheel. So I don't know. As far as like that Apple heyday or era, I don't know. That's a tough one.
I interviewed, I'm trying to remember what a guy who's involved with like flight simulator software. Let me find what it was. I don't remember the name of it because that's not my world. But I remember he said something about like whoever it is that runs their company encourages them to think about, you know, a 5 year time horizon. And if there's a good way to get there that's going to take it to, a good way to solve something that's going to take 6 months and a crappy way that's going to take a few weeks, to take the 6 month solution.
Hmm.
And it blew my mind because I realized I have literally never worked in a software company that had that perspective and view. And like I've run the team and I that's not a view that I'm able to figure out how to make work within the constraints of a business that I've operated. And it works kind of in this space. It's a long running thing. They have they kind of own their category. There's a bunch of other different, right? But yeah, I think it's interesting to think about the way our industry puts all these different uh, influences against quality and how LLMs exacerbate that.
I do
I
think.
mean,
Go ahead.
good. I was just gonna say Jobs, like Steve Jobs, right? Like leadership. Like what are we seeing from, you know, Steve Jobs versus like Sam Altman, right? Like what are they optimizing for? Like if they care about product quality, or do they care about like capturing market, or do they care about like just getting by for compliance? Like leadership starts to push through the organization, but like even when you care that much about product and you really want like an amazing, tight, great thing to come out, it's still like, well, if you give so much time to like do the right thing, there's also plenty of room for someone to like refactor something into fucking oblivion. And it's like, that's now just wasted time. And I've fallen into that trap where you spend too long making something perfect that isn't even the right thing to make. But I don't know. Well, what were you gonna say,
Yeah, I
Flo?
mean, oh, go ahead, Flo.
This is a bit of a topic change, so I don't want to butt in, but I do. I'm very, very curious on like you, like if we're talking about teaching, how to hold a language model to people. Like you brought up leadership. Like I'm curious what your. I have zero perspective on this, but I met a lot of leadership people at the last AI engineer event, and I'm like very curious what you guys think. Like your experiences with trying to teach the leadership how these things how these things work. But I do think K-Ball was had a different thought on like what you just said.
Oh, I was just gonna highlight that there's different in a business life cycle, there are different parts of time where you optimize for different things. And very often the thing that you are optimizing for is, if in startup world at least, is learning, right? You're optimizing for how quickly can you learn about something related to your market, your customer, something around that, which is a different frame than the quality of software. And totally valid. And actually, one of the reasons why I've never worked in an organization that really pushed quality was I've almost exclusively worked in early stage companies that are focused on trying to iterate their way to learning. Now, do I think they overbias often against quality? Yes, that's the thing I'm trying to learn and correct in myself and find ways to iterate on. But yeah, I think there is something there in terms of life cycle. I am curious actually for to hear other folks' reactions to flow because I am in the leadership area. So it's a little weird for me to be like, how do I teach? Though I did, do work on trying to influence the other execs at our startup. But curious what you all have run into.
I, I'll jump in and say I'm really curious. I'll connect it to flow, but about why people don't want to learn because I think I'm not an engineer. I'm a designer, product designer, and um, I think that there's something really interesting about this idea of not wanting to learn. And Kevin, you're talking about the idea of like enslopification and more like more garbage is still more garbage. But I don't think that most people even think about what they're doing as garbage. It's like the good enough thing. And so I don't know. To me, to come back to Flo's thing about how you teach this, I think that there is something about like a motivational piece, which is like, how do you get people to want to think for themselves? How do you get people to want to learn? Because I think that here's the cheat codes. Like, why wouldn't I just do that? And I think that there is room for amplifying or sort of elevating their thinking.
I was talking to a friend who's coming from a music background. So he's doing like, you know, editing music, you got all the different tracks and you're lining them up to the beat and all this stuff and you're generating samples and he created an AI system to like input a bunch of audio data and generate a sample based on that. So he could like do mashups of like two different like particular genre and a particular instrument. You could get a new sample out and then you can tinker with it. And his audience for the tool he's built, which is open source, are other like sound engineers and people that are in the music space and they're not super technical and they're not really thinking about AI like he is because he's using Claude Code to write the software that he like the plugins. And someone was just like, "Hey, so like, can you're just doing all this crazy stuff with Claude Code. Can you like show me how to do that?" And he's just like, uh, you could ask Claude Code how to do it. It's like, because that's all I did in a way. Like there is something about like if you have the motivation to want to learn how to do it, he's been teaching himself all sorts of stuff. Like he's taught himself how to deploy apps to different app stores. He's taught himself how to do like iOS and Android. He's taught himself how to do like, Docker containers and like infrastructure stuff. Like he's taught himself all the different building blocks that a software engineer needs to do things from top to bottom full stack. But he's taught himself that because he wanted to learn that and he's trying to solve problems really like intentionally. But I think a lot of people just kind of like there's almost like a fear of empty canvas thing where it's like, all we've ever seen was like step one, draw a circle, like step two, draw the rest of the fucking owl. And then they're like, well, I don't even know where to start. So then they see this empty chat box and they're just like, I don't know. And then there's a barrier there that needs to be pushed through to keep trying, and keep figuring out a way forward. But I'm also coming at this from an engineer standpoint. I'm actually really curious, Jake, like in what ways you found like agents are supplementing your workflows so that you can be faster and pick up more techniques and get more like creative output.
Yeah, and honestly, I think I'm very new at this. Like I think that
Beginner's
you're.
mind, perfect.
Well, I think that
For
there's
real,
part of
like
it
I
that like you're coming at it as an autodidact. You're saying like just learn it. It's going to teach you how to do it. And like I think there are things where I'm like I don't even know what questions to ask, or it's new for me to say like I want to learn about cursor. Like like give me a 3 week 3 weeks of assignments and to install it and figure it out, and like I'm starting from scratch. But I am also the kind of person that in general I'm autodidactic. Like I've taught myself how to play musical instruments and stuff, and sort of taught myself how to code a little bit. But I don't know. I think that um, Zach, you're asking like more specifically how have I used chat and agents in my workflow, and I don't know that I have a clear answer for that yet because I think I'm very new at this. Um,
Okay. So like just installed Cursor like last week.
like still figuring out how to do it.
Okay. Well, so this is like actually a very interesting use case because then it's like, okay, this is how does one get from 0 to 1? Because I've experienced like 1 to 10, 10 to 100, so to speak, right? That like how do you level up faster and accelerate it leveling up? But I also came in with a lot of experience from software, a lot of experience from like, IDEs and CLIs. Like, so when Claude
Yeah.
Code dropped, I was like, this is familiar. And like when Cursor dropped, I was like, oh, well, this is just VS Code. They just made it their own. And I was kind of like hand wavy about it at first, but I also had experience with it. So it's almost like there are certain things where I have had to like teach myself how a different tech stack works. Like for example, I had written effectively no Python a year ago. And in the last few months, I've been writing tons of Python, but there's also a certain like translatability where it's like, well, I know how I would do this with Ruby, or I know how I would do this with Golang. So how do I do it with Python? Or how do I do it with Rust? So like there's parallels, but coming from an entirely different perspective, like from design, it's like, okay, well, it might be maybe I have some experience with like layout and CSS and HTML, but I've never touched like the server side code that generates all of that stuff that lands on the front end. And then of course, like a lot of these agents are not good
You're
at
you're
writing
already you're already
UI.
skipping steps, right? There's a what does it mean server side? What does it mean, right?
Right,
The fact
right.
that so you there's a whole and this is I think a thing that is true in general for the AI stuff and there's a little bit of a hack, but you have to learn the questions to ask, right?
Yeah.
You already know a tremendous amount, Zach, about like what are the pieces that go into a software application. So now you can ask about, okay, what does this piece look like in here? Oh, okay, I kind of get that. If you're starting from like, what are all these things? Like I might start from what is a web page? What is it actually? Like what is a web page?
But also the agents have enough of that in their corpus that that line of questioning,
Right.
like
But
can
I'm just
start
saying,
to
like,
build an
this is the
understanding.
thing to, and this is maybe a hack to start saying there. And if we start talking about how do people who are maybe autodidacts already start becoming autodidacts with LLM tools or autodidacts with uh, using tools to write code, which is actually more even what you're talking about here, right? You're talking about not how do I learn the LLM, but how do I learn to use the LLM to create code that is going to like do something reproducible or do this thing that I want. But yeah, I think there's something to this starting from like yeah, being willing to ask the very naive why. Why does this work? How does this work? Tell me the mental model. What is the mental model for this? Okay, let me pull that thread and keep going. Um,
But also like just like the kid that asks why indefinitely, it starts to get kind of weird after a while. So you kind of have to figure out like, okay, what's the black box from here down? Like how do I just sort of say like, here are the inputs, here are the outputs. I don't need to know exactly what's going on inside. I just need a functional understanding to work with it,
it's an
right?
interesting thing. Some people can do that and some people can't.
I also think that
Absolutely.
a lot of people don't integrate this into their daily thinking. That I think a lot of engineers, you're like part of my job is to figure something out and to learn it. And I think I'm
Yeah.
coming at this from like I don't have time in my day to learn this. I don't have. I'm trying to like I got to get my work done, and this
Yeah.
why learning is actually in a lot of ways because it takes time, and I feel dumb and whatever. Like it feels
It's
counter.
humbling.
Yeah, but it also feels counterproductive. It feels like I'm just gonna not do that anymore and just do the long way. I'll give you a dumb example. I was working with two of my engineers and we like whiteboarded this workflow for how to think about the user journey. And I was like, okay, we have an hour till our next meeting. Let me go like take these sketches and then turn them into Figma files, and then I'll sort of write up the explanation. And they were all like, don't do that. Like, just take a photo of it, upload it to the LLM, and with a good prompt, you'll create the whole journey. And we sort of played a game around. We each took a picture and we each uploaded it to a different LLM, and it was to me that was like amazing because I didn't know that was when you're talking about integrating into my workflow, it was like, oh, that makes sense. But to me, there was like so many things that we had talked about but didn't capture. And so, how is it going to know that this box means this thing? Um, and I just don't think about that as part of my work. I think about chatting with Claude as like, help me figure out what to, where to take my kids on vacation and what to make for lunch this week. And it's like very basic.
Even within engineers, I have over my career observed a very large difference to the extent that people learn and keep learning and keep adapting themselves versus learn enough to get a thing done and then stop there and then never again revisit that. And I actually historically have fallen more on that side of like I'll learn a thing and then I'll move on. And if I need to do the thing, I'll come back and do it. And if some point later that, I mean, I've been doing this long enough, a lot of that knowledge is very outdated. And so then it's like, oh shit, I actually have to update this sometimes, but that's not my default mode. My default mode is learn it once and then, okay, that's good enough and
Yeah.
I
I
move
remember
on.
when Docker came out, I had a friend who was like, "Oh, dude, we're Dockerizing everything." And I was like, "I don't fucking need that. I'm just going to use EC2. It'll be fine." And actually, Jake, you were saying something about like the three of you kind of had like a game of it where you tried to see who could try different models and agents and web UIs to just like paste in the files and see who could come up like with the best plan. That sounds like the path. Like some of the most accelerated learning I've had in my career was when I was on like pair programming teams. And that's kind of where I picked up like the shoulder surf idea that I was asking Flo about. Like when you watch somebody else do the thing and you do it together, even if it's like an hour a week, you set aside to be like, hey, let's do this particular task together. I want to see how you approach it. And that's kind of one of the advantages of this time slot over the last like year that I've been attending is I'll see how someone's using a tool very differently than I use the tool. And then it shows me like, oh, didn't realize you could do that. Like even as simple as like, two people working in Figma, right? Like someone will use like a hotkey and you're like, wait, how'd you do that? Like that was
Mhm.
so much faster than I've been like click, 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 click. And that because these tools are so malleable and flexible and like strange and like inscrutable in some ways, because it's like no one really knows exactly how it works, but we all kind of have a functional understanding. Some have like tuned their functional understanding to this domain or that domain, whether it's like, here's everything in my fridge, help me figure out what to make for dinner because the kids are screaming and I need something quick.
Mhm.
Or it's like, here's all the different ideas of where I want to go on vacation with the family. Give me some ideas, maybe even like figure out flights for me, right?
Yeah.
And I know there's a bunch of different businesses out there figuring out how to do that, but you could probably just do it in ChatGPT or Claude. Um, it's just like seeing how other people use it, I think is huge. And that starts to create the list of like known unknowns, where rather than just being like, I know I can do this, and I don't know if I want to venture out and like experiment. But you see someone else do something that's valuable, then like, oh, well, now I know in this moment that that's possible. I don't know how it works, but I know it's possible. So now I'm going to figure out how to do it. And especially if you're shoulder to shoulder with somebody or you're like one on one on a Zoom call, then you can be like, hold on, slow down. Let's take 5 seconds. I really want to see how you did that because that's a game changer for me. But that gets back to the autodidactic thing where it's like this, like software engineers almost you have to be a lifelong learner. Like
No,
you
but
can't stop learning.
I think that that resonates in terms of like, college and early career, like working with other art directors, designers, being, here's an assignment we all have. How did you get it done in a day and it took me a week? And sort of
Mm.
that shared knowledge, I think, is a big help. It's a big, accelerant in learning. I like that.
Well, especially in a cross-domain context, I feel like I remember that startup that I worked at with the compliance stuff. Like I always wanted to sit with the other teams. Like I I wanted to sit with the product team. I wanted to sit with the front end, like design side of things. I wanted to sit with the lawyers. I wanted to like have a chance to see like, okay, how are you using the tools I'm building? So then I can see actually how it's being used so I could build it better. And from the other side, they would have insights where it's like, okay, well, I didn't necessarily reveal that this was possible, and it's hard to explain, but now we have a chance to like high bandwidth communicate about it. Like when it comes to design stuff, I'm assuming so you're probably diving into Cursor now because your team's using Cursor and you want to figure out how to meet them more in the middle. Yeah.
Yeah, everyone, there's lots of meetings where people are like, I tried this in Cursor. I don't know. Yeah, it seems like everyone's talking about it and I'm left out.
So now you're leveling up and did you find the Latent Space podcast and that's what led you here? Like I'm kind of curious how you landed in this particular group chat.
The honest answer is I work with Kevin.
Oh, well there it is.
Yeah. So I'm trying to do everything I can to learn and join groups like this and conversations and podcasts, but I'm feeling like a real fish out of water. But let's talk in 6 months. Maybe it'll be different.
Yeah. I mean, and it's just a friendly group and like
Yeah.
Kevin's kind of like helped steer this particular Friday afternoon thing and like the idea of it doesn't have to be polished, it's just to be interesting. Like I think he said that offhand a couple months ago and then I just was like, "Yep, I'm holding on to that and I'm going to put that in the chat every week." Um yeah, it became the mantra. Um and I'm like losing track of chat. I know Flo's been chatting a bit.
I will
Figma.
highlight.
I got to drop,
Oh,
but
all right. See you,
yeah.
Jake. Have
Thanks
a
for
good.
having me, guys. I'll be back.
I think a challenge that has definitely been true this year is also I at least ha seem to tap have some sort of renewable but limited resource internally for my capacity to learn and adopt new things. And I've been like redlining that for the last year, trying to keep up on everything going
The
on.
fire hose.
But but yeah, there definitely is like just there is definitely a rate limit that seems to be individual. Uh Manuel tells me he has one too. I have yet to observe it. I think it's just so far beyond mine that I don't see it. But yeah, it was
He
wild.
also runs the risk of like being so far down a particular line of thinking that it's like okay, it's the professor problem where they're like so smart and so capable that they have trouble explaining it to like people that are
Oh,
lower level.
100%, 100%. I often end up finding myself playing translator internally for him. Um,
Mm. But I'm
but
curious about other designers, right? So like Jake is a coworker of yours. He's on your team. All right. And you kind of gave him an inroad to be like, all right, if you want to learn more about this, especially like it's a holiday one, we're not doing super technical stuff. We're just kind of BSing about,
Mhm.
talking shop, sort of like happy hour energy. But would other people discover this space? Like there's selection biases at play for
Yeah.
sure. I actually never, I'm going to be honest, I've never really meaningfully listened to the podcast. Um, I just I was at a Ruby conference like a year and a half ago, and I was like, oh, there was someone gave a talk. It was Scott, who's like kind of active on this, and he also hosts an artificial Ruby in New York. And one of his coworkers was like, I need to level up on AI stuff. Like I'm ready to drink from the fire hose. And he's like, okay, you got to join this Discord, and this Discord. And he mentioned the latent space Discord, and I just went right to the Discord. I never even listened to the podcast. But that's how I found it. That was
That's
my
so funny.
on-ramp.
I was opposite. I was like super pod, not as much Discord until later on. That's funny how how that worked out.
Yeah. But so Flo, you've also been like a lot more involved in the events and organizing and all that. Like, how did that journey happen? I'm curious. Like, we never had a chance to really like drop in and talk.
I think I am just mostly a how can I help person. And I think you ask that question enough times and they're like, oh yeah, we have a thing that you can do. And that's, you just kind of fall into different places. And for me, it's more like, I really, really like this space, but like, I don't have any of the credentials or traditional background that most people have when they get into uh like I guess AI engineering, which is a cross between like machine learning and software engineering. Like neither one of those are my thing. I'm like an artist designer, basically. uh but I knew I wanted to stay here, but you have to figure out financially how to make that work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's pretty much it. Just that was my journey in. Like I went to the first one. I was like, oh, this is really cool. Cool people, smart people. I'd never been to San Francisco before either. It's our first time in SF. So just yeah, asking like, hey, I see this gap that you guys have as a normal, well-adjusted human being that doesn't necessarily care about the limelight or getting credit for things, because I feel like that's a huge thing also with engineers. Sometimes, maybe not
Yeah.
all the time, but sometimes.
Can be. Can be.
Or like wanting
But
wanting
that
to say I discovered this XY thing. Yeah. So I just don't care
and
about
that
that stuff.
mentality of like, I'm here, I'm interested, I've already got my sleeves rolled up and I'm already figuring out ways to do stuff. Like that's kind of the autodidact thing in a different way. Like that's how I ended up running like sound systems for like renegade raves in San Francisco during the pandemic because I was just like I just kept being like I want these events to happen. I'm gonna just keep finding things for me to do and next thing I know, I'm like dealing with XLR cables and figuring out like all the different decks and power systems so that we can have them operating at like Fort Funston, which is like off grid with like terrible climate for electronics. But then we've like, and then it turned into logistics. And now suddenly I'm the guy with the minivan because like everything's logistics. Everything is logistics, right? Like, there's some like quote from some general that was um, like amateurs talk like tactics and professionals talk logistics. Um, but it's still like I'm here, I have this skill set, and I'm just going to start finding the thing that I can do to contribute. And then next thing you know, I actually ended up burning out because I ended up becoming so indispensable and I'd picked up too many responsibilities and I wasn't good at delegating.
Yes, yes, for sure. No, yeah, I know that one all too well.
I will throw a thing into the fire here, which is often you don't need to be the expert. You just need to be the person with some initiative. Um, like I will use the example of latent spaces. My backstory here, I got into the Discord because I was chatting with Swix and I interviewed him for a podcast that I was doing and he was like, dude, you should really get into this AI stuff. And I was like, okay, I don't know how, where, whatever. He's like, well, we're doing this thing. Come check out. So I got into the Discord. I have listened to a few of his podcasts, but not tremendous amounts. And then like I was trying to learn and was like, hey, I don't understand any of I have none of the background. I do have a software background, but I have none of the ML background or anything like that. Like, are there some foundational papers? Could we do a paper club or anything like that? Like the paper club thing, if you go back far enough, you find that
That's
like,
you?
yeah, I started because, well, it's not, I didn't, I suggested it. I was like, hey, we should do this.
Right.
People were like, yeah, that's a
Right.
good idea. And then I scheduled the first one. I was like, fuck it, we're doing it. And I kind of did what I do for the AI in action for like the first 6 months. And then like at some point I was kind of like, this is out of my league. I'm more interested in the actual application. I don't like other people
Yeah.
started organizing and
I
doing it.
when
But
I
like I
join Paper Club, I am holding on for dear life most times. Because again, I'm also coming from the software background, but not the ML background. So they're going in deep on these
they're going
papers. And
deep.
like I don't read papers. Like I barely even read like software books. I'm usually just like, let's try it. Let's code some stuff, see if it happens.
That I raised this not to shoot my horn that I started. I haven't been involved with it for years now at this point, really, but because it started because I was like, we should do this because I want it, right? And so to flow to your point, none of the credentials, I didn't know any of the papers or anything. There were people in this server who did, and so it was kind of like, hey, can we do this? Like, if I put a time on the calendar, would you guys be interested? Can we show up and like just getting it to happen? And then you do it for a while and it becomes self-sustaining if it's valuable, right? And then you hand it off, which is that's the thing, the lesson I learned after I did the same exact thing uh, in 2010, 2011, something like that. I started the San Diego JavaScript meetup group because there wasn't a JavaScript meetup group
Sandeezy.
San Diego, right? I'd been doing a Ruby meetup. It was great. I loved it. I was doing more
Wait,
JavaScript. I
so
was like,
you have a Ruby background too?
yeah,
There's
I
something about like Ruby meetups. There was a
that was
moment where there was
that
just something
was
magical.
2000, around the 2009, 2010, 2011, like it was
That
happening.
was like Rails 3.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
after the MERB merge. Um
Yep.
yeah, no, it was happening back then. But anyway, yeah, so started that. It it took way too much time and energy, but it was great. And then eventually figured out to hand it off. And so yeah, I appreciate y'all organizing this more and more. And now we've got the bot doing stuff and whatever. So it's great. So I can hopefully extract myself, though I still get a lot of fun and value out of this too. But all of that is a roundabout way to say like you don't need to be the expert at all. You don't need to have the credentials. You just need to like be the one who says, yeah, it seems like other people are interested in this too. Like, let's get something on the calendar.
Well, and I think that kind of gets back to one of the points I was trying to make earlier of like it's not quite the blank canvas problem. It's a little bit more like people feel like they need permission. Like, so I used to run a Ruby meetup around a similar vintage, um, and it evolved into like a tech meetup in general. Because like in the New Haven, Connecticut area, there's enough people working in tech, but we didn't quite have enough density of Rubyists. So it ended up just sort of expanding, and now it's like anyone who works in tech in any way, shape, or form who's interested in talking shop. And I would run like talk nights. I would organize like lightning talks. There'd be hack nights. There'd be all this stuff. And I ended up burning out on that one too, because like again, I still haven't learned the art of handing off to Flo's point. Um, but it was I like totally lost my train of thought. I was like building. I was like, oh, I'm gonna make a great point. I got this great idea. Oh, the permission thing. Like it's gotten to the point now where so I stepped back. I moved out west. I spent years out there. I come back and I'm like reconnecting with the group. And I tried so hard to be like, this is DIY. Like anybody who wants to have an event, like just start chatting about it and like we'll set up the event if you pick the time and date and you guarantee that you'll be there first person and make sure everything like happens and then like welcome people over so they know like who's who at this random bar. But a lot of people feel like they need permission to do these things. So we're like trying to deputize people where it's like, yes, you're allowed to organize. But a lot of people just don't feel like they're allowed to, or that they could pop into the chat and say, hey, I'd love to talk about this subject and let's schedule a time or something. But we do have the bot and there's a time slot held and all that. But yeah.
I do think that kind of lends itself to what we were like the original topic, which is like learning how to hold a language model productively. I think like watching someone do it is probably the highest leverage. Like I don't know. Probably I was gonna say that to Jake earlier too. I think everyone here who is good at it or like is able to get a lot out of language models probably followed that form in some way or another, and they're not too much different than Jake. It's like just watching someone else do it, whether it be remotely, like you say on the Zoom call, or shoulder surfing, which is a new term I've heard. Like that I'm stealing. I'm definitely stealing that one. But yeah, I just think
It's
just
a good
watching
one.
someone do it is probably the best way to get to it. I guess is the conclusion of this talk, baby. There's a lot of nuance, but like
Well, and I will highlight that is the purpose generally of our meetups here, is to get somebody to show on a thing they did so we can watch somebody do it. And I use this as a cheat to figure out what are interesting things to learn. And that's the motivation for me a lot in building meetups and other things, is so that I can learn.
Yeah.
Right? None of the meetups or regular conversations or whatever that I've organized have been in domains where I was already the expert. Um, and I'm saying this partially to encourage flow, even though I know you're already overcommitted. But like, they're all places where I wanted to learn about a thing. So I took the fact that I wasn't scared of organizing people to organize a set of people who wanted to learn about it and wanted to talk about it, and then use that to teach myself. But the hack there, which you guys have probably already figured out, is then you start to be seen as an expert because you're organizing this thing for this topics. Clearly you're knowledgeable. And the double hack is because you're learning all this stuff along the way, you actually do become an expert.
Well, Flo, you just started a new mega thread of all these like agent orchestrator things. And I feel like every time you do that, you're now like collecting a bunch of information for yourself in a thread that other people can access. And it levels you up while it's also sharing like this is what I know about this stuff. Like I keep thinking about the presentation I did Claude as coach, and I'm going to try to schedule one for early in the new year for like my micro agent idea and maybe this other like, you know, digital dopamine addiction methadone system of like how do I get the scroll feel with an agent so that I can like explore ideas without falling into like advertising optimized casino dynamics.
mm,
Because it's like, well, it's forcing me to learn because I'm like, I have to have something. And I did approach the last presentation very presentation-y with slides and stuff. Maybe I can do one sooner. That's just like, here's my workflow in practice. Here's how I'm using Claude Code. That might be a little bit more interesting to this audience. But also, I'm thinking like, this is helping me build a portfolio so that I can then
yes.
have things to talk about in an interview where it's like, maybe this could open a door for me to work on the skills team at Anthropic because I'm like, I am pushing these skills fucking hard. Um,
Yeah, no. I guess as we wrap up, that's something. How do we get more Jakes in here? Because I think the people like it's like such a precious stage when you like first kind of discover like, oh, these things are actually somewhat smart and useful. How do we get more? Because I think those are the perfect people to be around as they're learning, because then you learn as well and get better at teaching, which is something I really want to do.
exactly. It's
How do you?
it's like when I used to run Ruby meetups, I'd do like Ruby newbie, and I would try to show people like here's how you can do like interesting Ruby stuff and try to like create a space for it to be welcoming to the next generation. So I just had to be one step ahead of them. I never had to be the expert. I just had to be one step ahead. And then I would learn from them learning, and then I would be able to clear blocks that I ran into when I was learning. And just like, yeah, it's great to see new faces. Like I always loved having new people join the events. It was great. Oh, and yeah, noted, Kevin. I was considering it as like if I'm gonna go big tech, it's gonna have to be like a frontier company. But I also
I,
recognize that could be an
I have
anti-pattern
not. I've heard that OpenAI is actually much chiller, but
Wow.
Anthropic is
intense.
extremely intense.
I guess you have
Noted.
for them to have the best models or the models. I guess it makes sense. But yes,
I mean, I don't know. We could wax on that for a while. I
yeah.
think uh,
That
for
that's
all of the
another happy hour.
For all the gripes I have with Altman, he's been around a lot of tech companies and knows how to like run a tech company well. And like I think understands that if you completely fry your whole staff, it will not end well. And I do not get that same impression from Anthropic's leadership.
That's crazy. Huh.
Well, luckily, my micro agent is helping me to learn how to potentially work with more commodity models. Like GLM 46 is really good. It's passing a lot of my evals, and I'm like, interesting. Maybe I could focus on the agent layer and then do some other business or find some other company that's doing something similar to what I want to do that might be able to kind of benefit from the approaches that I've been really enjoying.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Anyways, thanks for hanging out and chilling on a Friday. Uh, December 26th. If we look back to this time last year, what was it? I think Sonnet 3.5 was the most advanced model.
yeah, and Opus 4.5 is so much more capable. It's wild.
Yeah. I guess O1 had just come out as well, maybe.
Oh, right. Yeah.
The
And I
paradigm
think that
shift.
was before they, yeah, that was a million years ago. Dinosaurs, right? Yeah.